On this Monday night, a global news investigation. The Winnipeg man who served in a Chinese military branch blamed for cyber attacks against Canada.
Hi.
Hi there.
The questions about how well Ottawa screens newcomers. The UN Security Council's first calls for a ceasefire in Gaza.
The draft resolution has been adopted.
Why it's caused a rift between the U.S. and Israel. The scheduled departure for Boeing's CEO.
We have another mountain to climb.
As the aerospace giant's reputation keeps nosediving. And lost in translation, baseball superstar Shohei Ohtani on the accusations his interpreter pilfered millions from the pitcher.
Global National with Donna Friesen. Reporting tonight, Jackson Prosco.
Good evening and thanks for joining us. Global News has learned a former member of China's People's Liberation Army who spent decades with China's cyber warfare department has been living in Winnipeg and now faces deportation. The revelations come on a day when some of Canada's closest allies revealed they've faced cyber attacks by hackers with links to the Chinese government, while allegations of Chinese interference in Canadian elections will be central to hearings resuming this week in Ottawa, with the Prime Minister expected to testify in the near future. China is accused of hacking Canadian individuals, government agencies, and human rights organizations. And as Jeff Semple reports, this latest case raises questions about Canada's ability to screen foreign nationals who served in hostile governments.
China's army is the world's largest, but increasingly, its battlefield of choice is online.
A serious case of cyber espionage has been revealed in this country, and the suspect behind it is China.
Our spy agency detected hackers infiltrating the National Research Council.
Global News has deeper insight into what led to the collapse of Nortel and how China may have been involved.
China is accused of conducting extensive cyber attacks on Canadian targets. And Global News has learned a military veteran with China's cyber warfare department is now living in Canada.
Hi.
Hi there.
Reached at his home in Winnipeg, Hua Che-shu declined to comment. The lieutenant colonel retired from the military in 2018 after 2 decades and moved to Canada in 2021. Questioned by immigration officers, he denied any involvement in China's cyber warfare program. But Xu admitted he was an instructor at the Information Engineering University. The school is widely considered by Western intelligence analysts to be China's top military academy for cyber espionage. This Chinese state TV program appears to show the school's software conducting cyber attacks on an American university and Falun Gong websites.
China is the top of the pile in terms of countries that we're concerned about, in terms of the volume of attacks that they're capable of.
It's a difficult process to go through, for sure.
Daniel Thalheimer is one of 20,000 Canadians whose information was stolen in a suspected Chinese cyber attack on Equifax in 2017. Hackers emptied Thalheimer's accounts of around $30,000. He's still dealing with the fallout.
And yet the threat is still occurring every day, all day.
I think that Canada should take this issue seriously.
This Canadian member of China's persecuted Uyghur minority says this is just the latest example of alleged members of hostile and oppressive regimes moving to Canada.
We have a lot of flaws in our system and a lot of loopholes in our immigration system.
A court case to decide whether Xu should be deported is now being considered by Canada's Immigration Refugee Board. The IRB, incidentally, has also been targeted a decade ago by a suspected Chinese military cyber attack. Jackson?
Jeff Semple in Toronto, thanks. Tonight, both the U.S. and U.K. are revealing they faced serious cybersecurity breaches at the hands of Chinese hackers. The U.K. says the Chinese state-affiliated groups targeted MPs and U.K.'s Electoral Commission. In Washington, the U.S. State Department announced sanctions against members of the same group known as Apt 31, alleging the hackers with ties to the Chinese government targeted U.S. officials, politicians, and critical infrastructure, presenting a significant national security threat. After nearly 6 months of catastrophic fighting between Israel and Hamas, the United Nations Security Council has passed a resolution calling for an immediate ceasefire in Gaza.
The draft resolution has been adopted.
The resolution demands a halt to the fighting for the remainder of the holy month of Ramadan, along with the immediate release of all hostages taken captive by Hamas. The U.S. abstained from the vote, but key here, it did not veto the measure. Tonight, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is accusing Washington of abandoning its policy on the war. Redmond Shannon reports.
The demeanours of the Palestinian observer and Israeli ambassador said as much as their words ever could.
To this council, Israeli blood is cheap. This is a travesty, and I am disgusted.
Life must prevail in Gaza. Must prevail in Gaza. Freedom must prevail in Palestine.
The Security Council vote comes after previous failed attempts where either the US or Russia and China exercised their vetoes as permanent members.
Abstention.
On Monday, the US abstained, allowing the resolution to pass 14-0. It calls for an immediate ceasefire for the month of Ramadan, half of which has already passed, an immediate unconditional release of all hostages, and for the lifting of all barriers to aid in Gaza. The UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres said the resolution must be implemented. Failure would be unforgivable. The resolution text did not condemn Hamas. Israeli leader Benjamin Netanyahu said the US has abandoned its policy on the war and he has cancelled a diplomatic delegation to Washington. He and his UN ambassador say a ceasefire must be conditional on hostages being released.
It gives Hamas's terrorists, it gives the Hamas terrorists the hope to get a ceasefire without releasing the hostages.
The US ambassador sought to reassure its ever more isolated ally.
We fully support some of the critical objectives in this non-binding resolution.
Controversially calling the vote non-binding, even though Security Council votes are widely regarded as legally binding. Hamas has welcomed the vote, but it is not subject to UN resolutions, and even Israel can't be forced by the UN to abide. Ultimately, the power to sanction Israel would lie in the hands of world powers, in particular the US. Jackson?
Redmond Shannon in London, thanks. Canada has begun airlifting vulnerable Canadians out of Haiti as conditions there deteriorate. Foreign Affairs Minister Melanie Joly says eligible Canadians are being picked up by helicopter and flown to the Dominican Republic.
The Dominican Republic has strict eligibility requirements for all those entering the country. Only Canadian citizens who have a valid Canadian passport will be eligible for this assisted departure.
Joly says less than 30 eligible Canadians have come forward for immediate departure. 18 of them left today. Close to 300 Canadians have requested assistance to leave Haiti since violence erupted earlier this month among rival gangs, closing the international airport. As Russia recovers from last week's concert attack that killed at least 137 people, the Russian president again directed blame at Ukraine. Vladimir Putin blamed what he called radical Islamists, claiming the attack was part of what he called a wider campaign of intimidation by Ukraine. All four gunmen arrested appeared in court late Sunday, appearing heavily beaten before being charged with committing an act of terror. Russian officials have alleged Ukrainian involvement without offering proof. Kyiv has issued a firm denial. And in the wake of that attack, Russia has dramatically stepped up strikes on Ukraine, pummeling the capital and Ukraine's energy supply network. Once again today, Russian missiles targeted Kyiv, hitting a residential area, destroying a 3-story building. At least 10 people were injured. The U.S. ambassador to Ukraine says Russia used hypersonic missiles to attack the capital. Ukraine's foreign minister repeated calls for international allies to supply more air defense weapons to fend off the attacks. Donald Trump is celebrating a major win in the courts tonight. A New York appeals judge gave the Republican presidential candidate a partial lifeline. He gets more time and can put up less money to mount his appeal of the nearly $500 million civil fraud judgment against him.
It was a decision we appreciate and respect the appellate division very much. We have a judge who I believe is a crooked judge and a crooked attorney general. Absolutely crooked.
Trump slammed the New York judge who oversaw the civil fraud suit and the attorney general who filed it, alleging it to be politically motivated. The appeals court ruled to reduce the bond to $175 million. Reggie Cecchini joins us from Washington now. And Reggie, we know Trump has just over a week to find the money, but we're still talking about a huge amount here.
Well, the biggest question, Jackson, is where Trump will source this bond payment from. His lawyers had already raised concern over his liquid assets, saying much of his wealth is tied up in real estate, and that may be why no company would issue him a bond in the first place. But Trump did say that this will be paid for in cash, right around the time that he ignored questions from reporters to whether a foreign government may assist him. Now, if Trump does post his bond, it's expected to stay proceedings through September, which would deal a significant delay to the state's attorney general, who wouldn't be able to enforce collection against him.
The attorney general still has the judgment. That is going to be appealed. If he loses, the attorney general will still have $175 million plus interest in hand, and now can go after Trump on the enforcement procedure if he loses the appeal. And so there'll be lots of pickings from the field, so to speak.
So, Reggie, while there was good news for Trump in one case, he was also dealt a blow in the first criminal trial against him. Tell us more about the case that a judge now says can proceed.
Well, Jackson, this one carries historical significance because this will be the first ever criminal trial against a former president. If you remember, it's allegations that business records were falsified to cover a payment to bury stories about an alleged affair with an adult film star. This trial was actually supposed to start today, but after federal prosecutors released thousands of documents related to the trial just a few weeks ago, Trump's team asked for a delay. And today, the judge said this wasn't the fault of the DA's office and scheduled the trial to begin with jury selection on April 15th, which will not be easy, given Trump is such a polarizing figure. And Jackson, that's highlighted in new polling that suggests 44% of American voters say a conviction in this case won't affect the likelihood that they would support Donald Trump for president. Jackson?
Reggie Cecchini in Washington, thanks. Millions of Americans are bracing for more severe weather as a major spring storm sweeps the U.S. Several states are under weather alerts after being pummeled by heavy snow and rain over the weekend. California was hit with hail and flooding. This woman had to be rescued from a river in Los Angeles after being swept away Sunday. More than 30 centimeters of snow fell across New England. Thousands of residents there are still without power. And parts of the Midwest remain under blizzard warnings as the storm pushes north. Environment Canada has issued winter storm warnings across central Ontario, with heavy snow expected through Tuesday night. It's been one problem after another for Boeing. Coming up, what's next for the company as its CEO gears up to step down? A major shakeup at Boeing tonight as the plane maker announces a sudden change in its senior leadership. Boeing's CEO Dave Calhoun is stepping down at the end of the year. The head of Boeing's commercial airplanes division is retiring, and the chair of the board is also stepping aside. The departures cap off a turbulent period for Boeing following a series of deadly crashes and high-profile incidents, including that recent door blowout. Tonight, Ann Gaviola looks at how Boeing flew so badly off course.
The guest of honor, the Queen of the Skies.
The last Queen of the Skies rolled off Boeing's production line last year, a symbol of a bygone era for the plane maker, one where safety came first. The 747 jet deliveries peaked in the 1990s. That's when industry analysts say a major culture shift at Boeing began. Boeing's leadership dominated by a series of corporate men.
The philosophy that I think has been enforced in the last 25 years has been we should think about airplanes just like you might think about a consumer product or selling insurance or whatever, that we run this business like any other business.
But aerospace isn't like any other business.
Clearly, there was problems with quality. There was a problem that is causing their reputation around the world to be in trouble. So this is something they should probably have dealt with a while ago.
Dave Calhoun was appointed to the top job in 2019 after the company fired previous CEO Dennis Muhlenberg for his handling of the aftermath of two deadly 737 MAX crashes that killed nearly 350 people.
We have
177 passengers on board.
This year, Boeing has been plagued with safety and quality issues. From the door plug that blew off a Boeing 737 mid-air in January to the whistleblower who turned up dead of apparent suicide after testifying against the plane maker, to the terrifying plunge aboard a flight to New Zealand that left more than 50 people injured. Whether Boeing can enact the lasting cultural change U.S. federal authorities are calling for depends on who takes over. Will it be another so-called bean counter or someone with a background in aviation?
We won't really know what's going to happen at Boeing until we see kind of whether the engineering side wins out or the financial engineering side wins out.
We don't yet know who will succeed Calhoun. Some analysts say fast-rising Stephanie Pope, a longtime Boeing executive, is a top contender, while others say her new appointment as head of the commercial planes division clears the way for an outsider to take over from Calhoun. Jackson?
Ann Gaviola in Toronto. Thanks, Ann. Ahead, how a baseball superstar got caught up in a sports betting scandal. Major League Baseball's $700 million man is at the center of a brewing scandal. Star player Shohei Ohtani issued a statement today over allegations his interpreter stole from him and used his money for illegal gambling. Ohtani says he is sad and shocked about the alleged theft, but there are questions over whether he may have had any involvement himself. Eric Sorensen explains.
The biggest name in the game, 3 months after signing a $700 million U.S. contract with the Los Angeles Dodgers, Shohei Ohtani and his millions and his interpreter are at the center of a betting scandal.
First of all, I would like to thank the Los Angeles Dodgers.
Ippei Mizuhara, Ohtani's longtime interpreter and good friend, is being investigated after reported wire transfers from Ohtani's bank account over time totaling $4.5 million U.S. to a bookmaking operation in California. Gambling is illegal in California. First reports attributed to Mizuhara suggested Ohtani was covering Mizuhara's gambling debts. But when the news broke publicly, Ohtani's lawyers issued a statement. Shohei has been the victim of a massive theft. In his first at-bat in the Dodgers' season opener in Seoul last week, Ohtani and Mizuhara were kibitzing in the dugout during the game. Hours later, Mizuhara was fired by the Dodgers. Late today, Ohtani, with a new interpreter at his side, said that Mizuhara's accounts of Ohtani's involvement are lies.
I'm very saddened and shocked that someone who I'm trusted has done this. I never bet on baseball or any other sports, or never have asked somebody to do it on my behalf. In conclusion, Ippei has been stealing money from my account and has told lies. All of this has been a complete lie.
The idea that such a close confidant of the biggest player in baseball could allegedly betray him in that manner involving his money, this is what's shocking.
Federal investigators are looking into it, as is Major League Baseball. Pro sports and sports betting have become inextricably linked and mutually enriched. But Ohtani and the Dodgers are distancing themselves from the interpreter before the scandal tarnishes the game of baseball and its brightest star. Eric Sorensen, Global News, Toronto.
2 properties belonging to rapper Sean Combs are being searched by U.S. Homeland Security agents tonight. Authorities say the raids in LA and Miami are connected to an ongoing investigation. Combs has been accused of sexual assault and sex trafficking in multiple civil lawsuits over the last several months. The rapper has denied the accusations against him. Give it back. Next, the legal battle over the ownership of a meteorite.
Depot firing confirmed. Gaining.
Russia's Soyuz spacecraft successfully docked with the International Space Station today. It arrived 2 days later than planned after its original launch had to be aborted because of a technical problem. The spacecraft was carrying 3 astronauts from Russia, Belarus, and the U.S. The Russian and Belarusian will return to Earth on April 6th. The American will stay on board the International Space Station for the next 6 months. And finally tonight, a legal battle over a meteorite found in Sweden may be headed for that country's Supreme Court. The 14-kilogram chunk of iron rock landed on private property back in November of 2020, but ever since it's been in the middle of a court fight over who owned something that fell from the sky. Mike Armstrong explains.
It lit up the sky first over Finland and soon after Sweden as it tumbled to Earth. The sound the meteorite made came considerably later.
It really sounds out of this world when you hear this.
Johan Belsalhana was watching a movie with his family the night the meteor landed. From the sound, he knew it was close and searched for days. Well, as it turned out, the meteorite turned up at a museum. The 14-kilogram iron rock had been found by 2 geologists on his property, and he hadn't been told. Ben Salhana says he'd have given it to the museum as well, but that he wasn't happy with how things went down.
If you find something on someone else's property, you can't just take it away.
What came next is a court battle that even sparked this documentary film. For 3 years, the two sides went back and forth. The first round was won by the geologists. A judge said there was nothing in Swedish law that covered meteorites, so they owned it. But the second round went to the landowner. An appeal court decided a meteorite is part of the property where it falls. In the decision handed down last week, the judge writes, even though it may intuitively feel like a meteorite is something foreign to the Earth, the court considers meteorites or space rocks as part of the immovable property, just like other stones. Now, in most countries, including Canada and the US, something that falls on private property belongs to the owner of that property. If it falls on government-owned land, it's owned by that government. Well, the Swedish geologists who lost their court case now have until the end of April to appeal to the Supreme Court. As it turns out, the meteorite fell from the sky into years of legal limbo. Mike Armstrong, Global News, Montreal.
And that's Global National for this Monday night. I'm Jackson Prosco. Tonight's Your Canada is the Yukon River near Whitehorse. We always love to see your Canada. Please email it to viewers@globalnational.com. Thanks for watching. Carolyn Jarvis will be at the anchor desk tomorrow. Have a great night.